Hey guys, this is Colin Warren, also known as Deja Vu, and today I'm coming at you with a quick video answering a question about sound design and layering. Originally this was a question posted to me or sent to me via message from a Reddit user, but I figured in addition for it being easier for me to answer it in video form, there might be some of you out there who would enjoy also getting the answer to this, so hence the video. So today we're getting a question from user Richard Grayson. I'm going to save reading the whole paragraph because you guys can read it or pause the video. Basically, there's kind of a few questions in here regarding sound design and layering. One, when you're trying to get, because the end goal for your track should be, okay, I'm trying to make a full sound that, for the general energy I'm going for, I want to choose the right number of sounds and melodies and layers to convey that. One, how many synth layers should you choose? The next one, what does that look like? Maybe a quick example. And then finally, does the layering change from genre to genre? So, again, this is something I've just, to be honest, this was kind of trial and error after producing hundreds of tracks over 7 or 8 years. So, yeah, results may vary somewhat, but I've definitely noticed between my tracks and then, tracks of friends that I've worked with, and tracks outside of necessarily dance music, there are some commonalities that you can take that no matter what layering style, because you do end up having a layering style that you end up choosing, there's certain tips and tricks that you can implement no matter what genre, and there's certain things that will sound good whether you're producing future house or orchestra music. So maybe the first answer, kind of the answer to the question of how many synths, layers, etc. should you stack to make it sound full. The thing that you should pay attention to, and this is something I wasn't super familiar with until I took a formal music theory course, so I'll just save you the $500 or $2,000 from taking it. You need to be familiar with, no matter what sounds you're using, of a concept called chord voicing, or how you're actually stacking your layers. I've done a video on this in the past that I'll link to in this description. But basically, let's remove all the layers. Let's say if you take an instrument like the piano or the guitar, you can think of singer-songwriters like Ed Sheeran or classical pianists who will make a full sounding song using nothing but one instrument. And how do they do that? It's basically how they choose what notes do they choose on the piano or the guitar, and then how they play them that makes a song sound full. They don't have to stack 3 pianos together. They don't have to stack a piano guitar, which even though they sound good together, you can still make a full sounding song with just one instrument. And they're doing that because of how they voice their chords. So if you're not familiar with chord voicing, I would look into that. I'm just going to give you maybe a quick 1 or 2 minute crash course in chord voicing just to give you some general ideas, but I would look into the topic further. There's some music theory courses. But basically, when you're putting together, a basic melody, you're going to have your top line, which is your top melody. You're going to have your chords. They're just basically the frequencies that kind of support the top melody, and then you're going to have your bass. Those are kind of the 3 sections of the song. And then you can have, counter melodies and stuff like that kind of fill in these areas as you see fit. But those are kind of the 3 main elements to any track that you're going to have. So how I think about sound design is that each of these require a different sound. So the top line, let's say top line melodies, you can have, let's say, 2 or 3 synths because they're higher frequencies. You don't have this concept that you get in the bass called low frequency distortion. So you can actually layer 2 or 3 leads up top and you can really make something really cool sounding up there. That just one melody or one instrument wouldn't necessarily sound good with. If you're doing it right, you can have just one instrument and it'll still sound good, but higher frequencies or top line melodies are the spaces in which you can get away with layering multiple sounds. Now, let's go to our mid-range here, basic chord progression. In this case, I'm doing like a minor 1, major 7, major 6, major 7. Pretty basic. Here is where there's you have to kind of play with it and see what sounds good. To me, usually one element in the mid-range will do. Sometimes, piano or, Supersaw is one common one where you just take a Supersaw, maybe low pass it a bit or cut off the top of it to make some room for the highs. That will sound good. One thing you can get away with if you start layering 2 layers together is if you have something that sounds more synthetic, like let's say, or something that sounds more digital, I should say, like a Supersaw or Serum preset. If you layer that with something more natural sounding, like a piano or guitar, you put those together. That's where you can tend to see you can actually get multiple layers playing, and they'll still sound good. And that's the same with the top end as well. But yeah, for the mid-range, if you're layering multiple layers, try to have them sound fairly different from each other. At least in my experience, like layering like a piano with a Supersaw, that combination sounds good there. So that's for the mid-range for these 3 chords here. The bass, I find layer 1, stick with that. Sometimes you can get away with one trick people will do is they'll take the sub frequency, or they'll just take the bass note, they'll find another synth and they'll layer it one above. But in general, that's you can do that and just play it by ear and it might sound good. But in general, low frequencies, because you have to deal with low frequency harmonic distortion, you can only get away with stacking one note down here. So that's a quick overview of like, okay, how do I think about just even before you even get into sound design, basic chord voicing, or how you're going to melodically place everything. Because if you have a good melody, like I'll play here, and you can layer other stuff, but it sounds good just by itself. So that actually sounds pretty solid, and that's just a piano playing. So that's one thing to consider. Just even before you worry about layering and stuff like that, how are you playing your notes? That's the first thing you should consider. All right. Now that we've got that out of the way, now I'm going to get into a little bit more granular detail, because I think you also asked for example about, okay, what does a full sound layering design look like? So what I did is I pulled up one of my Chainsmoker remixes without the that I just recently finished. You can find it on my YouTube self-plug. But the main thing here, I'm removing the vocals, but I'm going to be showing off a little bit of how I thought about the layering. Once I made the basic melody, it all sounds good on just like a basic piano. Now how do I choose what sounds to stack together? So I'll play it so you just kind of get a sense of what it sounds like, and then I'll discuss it a bit. All right, so that's how it generally sounds. There's a little bit something missing because obviously I muted the vocals because I don't want to get kicked for copyright infringement here. But there would be maybe like a top line melody you would have playing as well that is currently filled up by the vocals. But that's basically what it sounds like. So let me discuss a little bit about how I thought about layering, if this sounds like a full layer to you. So if we go over here, we'll just go back and talk about isolating all the different parts. So we have obviously our bass, our mid-range, and our lead melody. So again, going to the bass, I just have literally just one bass here, just one bass note. This is just like a synth or wow, I'm blanking on that. Silent preset. Thank you. Just playing kind of the root note of the bass here. This is what it sounds like by itself. Nothing super fancy, but it's playing, it's filling out those lower frequencies down there. And that's all I have there. Sometimes I screw around with taking the root, taking the bass notes and finding another synth lead and then placing it up another octave, but that's very rare. And most of the time it can be done by just doing this. Next, all right, so we got the bass. Let's check out our mid-range. So the mid-range, I always start with the piano, and then I can choose as I see fit. But this is what the piano sounds like by itself. I'm just going to mute this part. So that sounds good. If we just had to add the bass, it actually sounds pretty solid. But some other things I like layering is some white noise. Just kind of give that top end some sparkle. You don't have to. You might see, wow, you have 3 notes later for your white noise. Is there something else I'm missing? I was like, no, just lazy. I didn't choose one note. I just copied and pasted into the 3x oscillator. Yeah, that was it. There's no reason. I was just fucking lazy. Yeah, so you have white noise. And then again, layering different instruments in the mid-range just to see how they work together will sometimes sounds good. In this case, I layered a synth. Again, piano and synth is a great combination that always sounds good to me. And finally, I layered just a basic guitar sound because I felt like after playing around with it, it gave it a little bit more. There's a little bit more transients in the guitar. And it also filled out some frequencies because it was so distorted that weren't quite filled out by this main synth here. So this is what it sounds like together. So that's what it sounds like by itself. And that's the mid-range. So now let's say if we go to our top melody, and the top melody actually turned down a bit because it needed to make room for the vocals, but this is what it sounds like. And the reason I chose only 2 is because the vocals were there. But if the vocals weren't there, I might turn those up a bit, maybe add 1 or 2 more synths. Yeah, that's about it. So if we add them all together, this is what they sound like. And in terms of processing, I actually don't really have a whole lot going on. Let's see. Yeah, like if you look at most of my chains here for the leads there, I have, something side chaining, a filter. Yeah, I literally just took a preset, or in this case, this is a sound that I know sounds good after just messing around with a bit. But yeah, most of these are just presets, turn volume matched, and then, yeah, just, for the bass line, only stacking 1 of them there. And then for the mid-range, only choosing 2 or 3 elements that sound different. And then the top end, you can kind of go crazy with there. So that's maybe some insight about, how I think about layering. Maybe that gives you a nice example. And then finally, I think that was the final question about whether layering changes between genres. Specifically, I think you were asking about future house, future bass. Let's see which ones you were asking about. I know the future bass is one of them. House, and then just house music. And I think you also talked about future house as well. Yeah. So does layering change between both of them? Yes, it does. Specifically between future bass and house, not completely. It's just future bass runs at a slower BPM. So actually, if you look at projects between both, you actually find they're pretty similar. It's just one is going a lot slower than the other. But yeah, in terms of layering, from my experience, they're about the same. In terms of this is something where I don't want to go into like the details of what I found, the differences between between each subgenre. You have to kind of go explore and mess around with it yourself. But I will say, no matter what genre you're in, there's going to be 3 areas that you need to fill up with some sort of sound. Potentially 4. You need your bass line, and that's going to usually take just 1 element. Most of the time, actually, for me, it's just a sine wave. Maybe something else stacked on top of it, but just a basic sine wave to fill out the bottom end. You have your mid area. Mid area is usually filled out by, your chord progression. You have usually 3 or 4 notes there that are just kind of, supporting the track. That's filled out by some other element. For future house, sometimes it's only just 1 note there, but then that's usually layered just with, a couple elements there, but it's usually not super crazy. And then you have your top lead, which you can have 2 or 3 elements playing up there, going crazy, yada yada. So hopefully that's been helpful. Thanks again for the awesome question. And if any of you guys have questions that you'd like to see me do a video on, feel free to post them in the comments down below, and I'll see if I can get to them in another video. With that, this has been Colin Warren, aka Deja Vu, signing off. Thanks again for watching. If you like this video and you like more content from me, of course, you can hit subscribe down there. I also have courses for those of you who may be beginners who are trying to look to start your own track from start to finish, make it from scratch. You can check out some of my Udemy courses down below. Some are free, some are paid. Just stuff I wish I had starting out. And yeah, with that, take care. Hopefully this helps. And like everything else, there's only so many videos you can watch. You should go out and practice it. So yeah, go do that.